What's up, everyone? This is Antoine Thomas here with another episode of Silver Lining TV, where we motivate and inspire people to create a better life through real estate. So I have an awesome guest today. He is a loan officer with Ruoff Home Mortgage, has been in the business for a long time, very experienced, one of the sharpest men I know. Don Frazier, welcome to the show, my brother. Uh-oh, can't hear you.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
There we go, loud and clear. Welcome
Thanks
to the
for
show,
having
my
me.
brother. Absolutely,
Thanks.
it's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. So what I want to do to start us off, I would like to have you give a brief 1 to 2 minute background on yourself to just inform people why they should watch this episode all the way through. How's that sound?
Okay.
All right, go ahead. The floor is yours, brother.
Well, again, I'm Don Frazier from Ruoff Mortgage. I've been in the mortgage industry now 26 years. Love what I do. I'm a specialist with Ruoff in the renovation department. Love having a rehab. One of my specialties is rehab for life, bringing it back from old to new. So just a lot of other things. I've been living here in the Lafayette area for over 20 something years. I have a beautiful daughter, beautiful wife, and just living a life. So loving to do mortgages and working in the real estate industry.
Love it. Hey, that's a beautiful intro. And that's why I wanted you to do it, because only you can give it justice and do it as smooth as you can. If you haven't noticed, I make fun of Don. It's not really making fun of him, but he has one of the smoothest voices I've ever heard. I mean, so he's a great fella. And I actually want to share a story before we get into the content and unpack all the information for you guys. I want to talk about how I met Don. So Don has been, like he mentioned, in the business for 26 years. And the first time I actually have met Don, it was at a closing. And this is before we were working together. I don't know if he even remember this, but you were helping a beautiful family and they were purchasing a home that I was selling, and they were actually purchasing the home I grew up in. Right.
Okay.
So it was pretty crazy. And it was the first time seeing you. I was like, man, I've never met this fella before. And we had a brief conversation at the closing, and about a year or two later, we connected again. And right off the bat, you were like, hey, listen, I'm going to prove myself. I'm going to show you that I do good business. I put people before business, and I have the heart of gold. And man, did you prove that within 30 days of having that conversation with me. So I just want to say, before we get started, myself and everybody in Silver Lining and the organization, we all thank you, and we appreciate you for everything that not only you do for us and our families, but for our clients as well. Because I know they're also your clients, and just the level of service that you give, man, it's hard to find out here. So thank you, brother. Thank you for being
Appreciate
you.
that. Completely appreciate it.
No problem. Well, we're going to get right into it. So if you don't know already, the title of the show is Debt, Income, and Real Estate. Oh my, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with, what is it, The Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
And so we're gonna talk about that. Don's going to unpack a lot of information. I advise one thing, guys: be a friend, be a great brother, sister, be a great son. To people who may need this information, please share it. Do people a favor. We're trying to give out the information, as much info as possible, on a weekly basis, so we can help educate the community and help people make great decisions when it comes to building wealth and owning and purchasing, selling real estate. Okay, so please do every service and share this with as many people as possible. And there's going to be a lot to unpack today, due to we're going to be talking a lot about financials. All right, this may be and I say this with every episode we've done, but it's the truth. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of information. So please rewatch. You're not going to retain everything and just during a live. Also, one other thing I want to point out before we get started: if you have any comments, any questions, please leave it in the chat, and we will do our best to answer it before we get off the live. Okay. All right. So again, conversation for today: debt, income, and real estate. So I'm going to actually give the floor to Don, and I'm going to be learning just like everybody else. So I'm going to let Don kind of unpack things. And then if you have questions, like I mentioned, we'll stop and we'll answer those and we'll come back to it. And it looks like we may have a comment already. Hey, Carrie. Carrie Lopez said hello.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Carrie, how you doing? Actually, we need to connect. It's been a while since we connected, but I hope all is well with you and the family. All right, Don, the floor is yours, brother. Where we're gonna go? Let's go ahead and unpack everything.
Well, as a mortgage professional, most people always want to know, what is the most that I can afford? What's the most that I can buy? And to me, that's like a loaded question. And I'm always afraid of that in a situation, because when you look at purchasing a home, you're going to get qualified off of your gross income. But most people, when we all live off of our net income. So we're not taking into account a lot of other things that you pay on a monthly basis that will definitely then impact your ability to repay, as well as your ability to be able to adjust to situations that might happen on the fly, such as life expenses. So when I talk about gross income, it's basically your gross hours times your gross wages or hourly rate, your salary divided by 12, which becomes a monthly basis. And that's what we use to calculate how you're able to approve for a loan. So
Gotcha.
when we look at you, we're going to look at, we don't want to see that the housing payment itself. So what you're wanting to be approved for should not exceed a third of the limit of a third of what your gross income is. And your total debt is what we like to see is around 45% of that gross income. Now, various products will have different limits as far as what they can prove. USDA is a little tighter in as far as its debt to income ratios. They like to see you around that 43%. Conventional likes you to be pretty tight to that 45%. And FHA will allow you to go up to that 50%. And again, I'm talking about your gross income. So to give you an example, I have a client I'm working with right now, single mother. She makes barely under $3,000 a month, right at around $2,900 or so a month. Her gross debts are right at around $1,400 a month. So she's right under that 50% gross income. The monthly payment that she wants to buy against her home, it fits perfectly within that 30%. She's actually at around 25% of her gross, and her total debts are around 46%. But if I flip that to her net income, which is what she's going to actually have to repay these bills out of, then that housing payment goes up to 37% of her net income, as well as the total back end goes up to 68% of that net income. So out of all the numbers and these percentages that I'm talking about, basically it leaves her $621 after she pays her mortgage payment, after she pays her car payment, to basically live on. That's all utilities. That's car insurance, that's gas for the month, that's childcare if you have it, that's any kind of incidentals. Your daughter comes home from school, well, here, not in the COVID area, and she comes home from school and says, hey, I have a book project that's another $40 that you didn't account for in that budget. So all of these things are not accounted for in your calculations of when you're calculating what can I afford for an actual home. So those things can easily misthrow those situations. A lot of people ask, well, why do you have to calculate my student loan payment into my debt to income ratio when it's deferred? Well, that payment's not going to stay deferred forever. And when it comes to, we have to know that you're going to have the ability to pay that payment as well as still maintain your housing payments and everything else as well. So that's why debt to income ratio is so important. But I like people to focus more on their net versus the gross, because the net is what you're paying everything out of. And that's all you're going to have for that month. And you can see where someone can go from a rental situation into a home situation, expecting it to be awesome. I'm going to pay in myself. I'm going to be building equity every month. I'm not sending out rent. I'm not paying rent every month to someone else. But then at the same time, your life never changed because you're still struggling from paycheck to paycheck to now make all of these bills, or even falling behind because with a new home comes new expenses, new furniture, new garbage cans, just simple things that are going to add up as far as money that you're going to have to spend. So I just like people to be more focused on their net income and how they're setting themselves up in purchasing a home versus looking at the gross and what's the most that I can pay.
Don, yes, 100%. And you said a lot there. You said a lot. So we're going to unpack what you just said. But before we do that, Carrie asked, what about if you're self-employed and most of your money comes through cash or cash app, not checks. What would you say to that, Don?
Well, as long as you're paying taxes. So as long as you're using some type of accounting system to account all the money that you're bringing in, and when you file your taxes at the end of the year, you're accounting for that money. When you're a self-employed person, how we're going to look at your income, you need a 2-year history of showing that you are running a self-employed business, that you're making a certain amount of money per month. That money's not, again, going to go off of your gross receipts. It's going to go off of that adjusted gross income that you file your taxes on. So if you made $1 million gross receipts, but you only filed taxes on $100,000, then for mortgage purposes, you only make $100,000. So that's how you have to look at that as a self-employed person.
That personally happened to me when I bought my recent property. It was my adjusted income based on, so my adjusted income was much lower than what my gross income was. So Carrie, I hope that answered your question. It looks like she responded okay. Carrie, if you have any other questions, just let us know. But I hope that was the answer that answered your question for you. Don, one thing that you mentioned is, I think you said 1/3 of your net income should be your gross should be applied to your, like, that shows how much you can afford for a mortgage. 1/3 of that, right?
1/3 of that.
So everybody, that is an easy rule of thumb. Just whenever you're purchasing things, and we're talking about net, so gross is one thing, but to make sure you're safe, make sure you're going off net, because that is the actual money that is hitting your account is going to be net. That's what you're living off of.
Mm-hmm.
But the 1/3 of your total income monthly income should be will give you the payment, will allow you to pay a mortgage. I think a lot of people don't even know that simple rule of thumb, and just even knowing that can actually save you a lot of heartache and a lot of things that is happening with COVID. A lot of people going into forbearance or possible foreclosures and stuff like that. A lot of that can be prevented if you just even follow that rule. Don, so in regards to net and gross, and you touched on debt versus income. What are some of the things that, and I think you already kind of touched on a little bit, so I apologize if you already did. What would you tell somebody who's a first-time home buyer and, maybe they have a raise coming up sometime in the next 6 months? Would you have them go off the raise? Would you have them go off their current income? What would you do with that buyer?
Well, I always advise to try to qualify just on your base income. So whatever you make on an hourly basis at 40 hours a week, whatever you make on a salary, just simply divided by 12 is where I would qualify. Because in most cases, overtime is not guaranteed. In most cases, even if you have that raise, again, you're taking yourself right back into that same situation. So that if you get the raise, then let the raise be the cushion. Let the raise be that buffer that you'll have in case something happens, versus it being something that you obligate right away the moment you get it. So I never advise of going off of those things. We most definitely, we can qualify you based on any types of income that you can prove, as far as overtime and commissions and things like that we can show a 2-year history on. But I don't advise people to use those numbers in qualifying for their home, simply because it's not guaranteed.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I know that there's been times where we'd had conversations, whether it's at a consultation or prior to the consultation with a client, and they would mention that they could pay off some debt. And is that the smart thing to do? Yes or no? And it's always hard for me to answer it, just because I'm a no debt guy anyways. I always say pay off debt. However, there are some rules in increasing your credit score to where you want it to be to secure the best rate. There are some rule of thumbs that you could follow, and sometimes even save money and still get the result that you want. Don, if you don't mind, could you kind of explain to somebody, if they're in that situation, they have some tax money, they want to pay off some debt. Generally, what is your general advice for those situations?
Well, I mean, again, I'm like you in that situation, so I'm a no debt type of guy. If you can pay that debt off and get rid of it, then it's monies that you're going to be able to build for your reserves. It's money that you'll then be able to have to invest, to increase your wealth, to increase your security as far as financially is concerned. So that's things that I always say. Now, if you're looking at paying off debt to purchase a home, again, for me, I look at that as you're stepping outside of where you should be again, because if you're looking to max yourself out, you're saying, okay, I'll pay this debt off only so I can obligate it to this house or this payment, which again is not putting you in a better situation as far as financially and moving towards being out of debt or letting your money become an asset for you along with your home as well.
That's great advice. And one of the things I try to explain to our clients, and when we first have the initial conversation, is even if you got to wait a little bit to make sure you're making the best decision possible, it's worth waiting a few more months. For example, if somebody is wanting to purchase a home and they are very motivated, they're very inspired, they're excited to do so, however, they have no money saved up, I always tell them, why don't you try to at least get $1,000 saved up, like as an emergency fund. I would actually recommend 3 to 6 months saved, because at the end of the day, a lender will like to see that. That helps them determine whether you can get pre-approved if you got some money saved up. Is that right, Don?
Yeah, well, it definitely helps. The money will be
Yeah.
considered reserves. So all that you can show. So if you have $1,000 a month mortgage payment and you have $12,000 in a savings, then I say that you have 12 months of reserves, which strengthens your application, which makes you look good to say that you can go a year without working and still be able to make that mortgage payment. So it makes you a lot stronger as far as an application is concerned, versus that same person who has no money in the bank, just enough to complete the transaction. Well, then if anything happens, you have no reserves. So you could get laid off the next day. You could be disabled the next day. And then what happens? You have a home that you just got that now you have to sell, or it's taken from you if you don't sell, simply so that you don't get in a bad situation.
Absolutely. So it's always better to be prepared and to make sure you have contingency plans in place, especially in the commitment in buying a home. And I will say there's a lot of advice that we can give, but it's always important. Seek the professional, have a consultation. We offer free consultations, and we can go over an action plan, a checklist to help you get prepared to buy a home. You may not be wanting to buy for another year, which for you, that's fantastic. What we find is when our buyer clients can actually take their time and they're not being rushed, it generally works out better for them, because we can plan, save money. We can knock out a couple things as far as debt. We can make sure that the patience, being able to be out in this crazy market as a buyer, the more patience you have is actually a good thing. However, if you see a property, and I want to actually, let me rewind that back. You got to be patient. However, you still got to be aggressive, because if you find the right home, you want to make sure you're aggressively offering on it to get your offer accepted, because there are probably about 3 buyers for every 1 home that's available. So keep that in mind too. However, you want to make sure your financials are in place when you are stepping into this arena. And Don is being in the business for as long as he has, being very successful, being great with money in his own personal life. He can help guide you not only from a lender standpoint, but also as a friend, also as and again, he's not a financial advisor. So I want to make that very clear. And I'm not either. I'm not either. But I will say we are knowledgeable when it comes to handling money and making sure you're making smart moves, because at the end of the day, you're making an investment in an asset. And the last thing you want to do is have COVID or something affect you working or whatever it may be. You get sick or something happens, God forbid, to where you can't work. And now you have no funds available to keep your asset, And one of the best ways of building wealth for you and your family, a legacy for you and your family, is through real estate. And again, our mission is to motivate and inspire people to create a better life through real estate. So that is what we're doing. Don, we're about 20 minutes in. Is there anything else you want to add to the conversation before we put a bow on this one?
Yeah. What I would like to tell everybody that's out there listening today is sit down tonight and go over your gross versus your net. Look at your gross income, sit down, break it down to the net, take your pay stubs, look at what you bring home each month, times that times 4 if you're paid weekly, bi-weekly times 2, and that's what your net income is. And then look at all of those other things, what you pay for childcare, internet, cell phone, car insurance, all your living expenses to see, are you prepared to buy a home? And if you are, and you say yes from those numbers, then look at your bank account and see if you have at least 3 months of reserves of that number in your account. And then I would say you're truly ready. Now, you can buy a home without having those types of situations. You can be approved, but to be safe and to have some security and to know that you're going to be on the road to success, I would look at keeping those numbers at around no more than 30% of your gross income as a mortgage payment or a rental payment, and have no more than 45% of your gross income obligated to those things that you pay that report on your credit report. Because again, those things are not taken into account: child care, utilities, cell phone bills, all of those other things that you take to live and when qualifying for that home.
Absolutely. That's excellent advice. Thank you, Don Frazier. Again, people, this is going to be one where you're going to want to rewatch. Don is very knowledgeable and there's a lot of information. So if you rewatch it, you still have questions, reach out to one of us directly, whether it's on Facebook. And as a matter of fact, Don, how can people, if they had questions about getting pre-approved or wanting to buy here in the future, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, you can always reach me by calling me on my cell phone, and 765-714-4754. If you're looking to apply, you can always go to my website, and that's www.donfrazier.com. I'm sorry, forgive me of that. That's www.ruoff.com/Don Frazier, FRAZIER.
/ baby. Yeah.
Yes.
Or you can reach out to him directly on Facebook as well. We understand Facebook is the easy way to connect these days. So again, yeah, I hope this was very valuable information for you. Again, this is going to be one you want to rewatch. If you have any questions, we may have a comment here. Let me make sure. Oh, hey, Scotty, what's going on, my brother? Scotty says, great info. I like to call Don just to hear his outgoing voicemail greeting.
Yes. You're the one filling up my voicemail, huh, Scotty?
That is funny. Appreciate you, Scotty. Carrie had another question. Let's see, I'm interested in the consultation and getting a checklist created so that I can know which direction to go. Absolutely, Carrie. And again, reach out to myself, reach out to Don on Facebook. We can reach, actually, I have your contact information. I'll reach out to you today and we'll get that set up for you. So then again, we can just break everything down. We can slow down and make sure we answer all your questions directly. So I will reach out to you and we'll get that rolling. I want to make sure that I have all the questions answered here before we hop off. I think we are good here. So yeah, this was valuable. This will be up on Facebook so you guys can rewatch it on YouTube as well. And I want to always like to close the right way. Our goal is to help you reach yours, and we're always here to provide and serve the community at the highest level as possible. We love all you guys. You guys stay safe out there, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you, Don. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you, sir. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Take care, guys.